assesses the operations that could be planned by Ukrainian side, whether it is security service of Ukraine or defense intelligence. It depends, of course, on them, and if there are any plans that we probably are not sure of them. Already Ukraine proved that we can reach Crimea. Ukraine didn't decide to strike this bridge after already a successful operation, because it is quite easily repaired. We already have seen that Russians don't need that much time to repair the bridge and basically renew the logistic. On the other hand, we understand that just the destruction of the bridge won't change much for us, because the biggest amount of the provision that's are going to Crimea is going through the land, through the Mariupol logistic hub, and through this big roads, and also through railways. So this is biggest provider of the provision to the peninsula. That's why it is so important that during the past months, Ukraine basically organized like a hunting for a logistic route of Russian Federation. So our strikes on railways, like explosives of the railways on the southern part of Ukraine, to expand our capabilities to strike the targets on the southern part of Ukraine. This is the main strategy of Ukraine in that area. And also cooperation with our resistance movement, which is providing Ukraine with necessary information, and the people who also participating in the divergent operation in the southern Ukraine also helping to have this logistic of Russians under control. We already have seen that Russians, as I said, with Crimean bridge, Russians are very good with the work of repairment. So that is, we never know how much time it would take for them to basically reestablish everything and start the logistic once again. But the most important is not one specific strike. The most important is the system that we are creating into taking this logistic under the control, because it's for Mariupol, it's not only the port but also the railways, all the roads that are leading to the city, and Mariupol itself is the one of the biggest and most important logistical hub in the southern part of Ukraine, through which they are sourcing everything that they gathered in Russian Federation, which they are using basically to redirect different types of needed resources to the rest part of the occupied territories. So with this strike on Mariupol port, we are showing the first thing that we have the capability to reach it, and we will repeat this if needed. We have the people on the land which are telling our intelligence what we can possibly strike in there, and of course we are organizing the infrastructure in that area in general, so they won't feel safe to continue their logistics through these routes. In that sense, it will first help us to prolong the time with which they would be able to send the provision to the southern part of Ukraine. It is also giving them less capabilities to do it fast and in needed amount, and also this psychological pressure, not so they won't feel safe to do this work. So what we see right now in southern part of Ukraine was it is a big part of Ukrainian strategy till 2026, because the first rule what we see right now is that we are trying to strike in the weakest point. Where we see it is weak, we are gathering our resources and we trying to push. That's why we are seeing these results in the south of Ukraine, and we still won't see that much results in the east of Ukraine, as this part of occupied territories, they are well connected to Russian territory, huge network of railways, of the roads, and that's why they would be able to continue to provide these territories with enough resources through their network of logistic. But we see that they are not able to do this in the south of Ukraine. That's why we are pressuring in there. That's why we also see that on this tactical level, there are counter-offensive operations of Ukrainian defense forces in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, for example. And this strategy is also forcing Russia to relocate resources. They are saying that they are losing the control under one part. That's why they forced to take resources, let's say, from the east east of Ukraine and put them to the southern part of Ukraine. But this is a tactical level. At the same time, we continue to build up the capabilities of our brigades that are on the front line, build up capabilities in their drone efforts. Their main task on that level is to suck the most of Russian resources as possible. What I mean by that, last year, for every square occupied kilometers of Ukrainian territories, Russian paid the price of 70 Russian soldiers in killed and wounded. Right now, this price is 170 soldiers, which almost 2.5 times higher than the last year. So we see this price that they are paying for the occupation. In other hand, they also need to spare more resources in case of their weaponry to fight our forces on the front line. This was the strategy that was also established by General Syrskyi, because what he said that in this war, a war of exhaustion, of what we need is to force Russian to spend more resources than they are able to cover. And what we see from the situation in Russia, that they aren't able to mobilize and recruit enough people, for example, to cover all that losses and to continue to fight and continue to make these offensive operations with that speed that they used to. So on and there is also a tactical level on which Ukraine is trying to develop its we are developing our own middle strike capabilities, which are aiming to reach the targets on the occupied territories. For example, Russians located their biggest storages with ammunition, headquarters of different brigades and commands, and so on. So destructions of these targets, something that would immediately affect situation on the front line, as forces on the front line won't have access to quick access to needed resources. And there is also a strategic level on which we are working, and which is probably the most covered on international news as well. It is deep strikes of in Russian territories. It is something that this campaign started actively last year with development of our deep strikes capabilities, development of drones that are able to provide a good result after the strikes. So our drones right now are able to take more explosives, and that's why we are seeing this huge blow-ups on different objects. So this is something that is not providing a quick result on the front line, but constantly weakening Russian economy and Russian military machine. That's why we see that the latest strikes aim to destroy, first of all, oil infrastructure of Russian Federation, which is the main source of the money for the war. So this is priorities for Ukraine on 2026. We probably won't see that much changes on the front line. Russians still will continue to advance on the east of Ukraine as they are able to provide the movement in that direction. But definitely we are seeing that the war is not as active on the front line as it was, for example, on the last summer. Right now, Russians are saying that they started their summer offensive campaign, but we don't see that much result out of that.